everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray. Firstly, an apology. I know that there have been lots of you who have asked questions on various comment forums, whether it be on Messenger or on Facebook or indeed on YouTube and things like that. We do read them all. There's no need for you to feel like an orphan. That's a quote from one of the poor old commenters who feels that we don't read them. And we do get through them all and see them. So firstly, an apology there. There's no need to feel like an orphan. Secondly, there are some questions that even I, we'll get to that, can't answer. I just don't know enough. Or either the answer can't be fitted into 10 minutes, which we've sort of decided is this format, or can't be answered at all. It's a very uninteresting podcast. We don't know. So there's those sorts of parameters involved. So apologies. So, of course, you can ask a question, and I'll get onto a question in a minute. You can send us an email. You can stop me in the street. You can even send us a postcard. Now, one of the questions was, how do we send you a postcard? Well, indeed, I have got a postal address, which I'll give you now, which is P.O. Box 222, Belfield, Belfield, NSW, which is New South Wales, Australia, NSW 2191. That's the postcode, which will get a postcard to me. And I will go and check my office box for Ancient Warfare Answers. So I look forward to an actual postcard. I apologize for the costs of international postage if indeed you choose to send me that way, and I will frame them and put them behind me because they will be precious to me. Anyway, a bit like a golden ring. This question is a little bit self-indulgent because there's several questions that I'm going to try and answer. But this one basically is about me, which I quite like. Of course I do. I'll never be stopping. And that was Uchale, I'm not sure how that's said. Uchale, not so, who asked, what's a postal address? So there's a postal address. You can, of course, support us on Patreon. If you like the podcast, you can do that. There's 3 levels of support on Patreon: Legionary, Optio, and Centurion. Just go to Patreon/Ancient Warfare Podcast. Now, I did say that this question is about me. This is from Jamie Peter on YouTube. Here's my question for Ancient Warfare Answers with Murray. The rest of the guys on the podcast all have their areas of expertise and each are an expert in different, very specific aspect of ancient history, whereas you seem to have a grasp of all of it. How did you become such a generalist? Thank you, Jamie. I've been at this a while. So I started ancient history in seriousness at university in 1990. So golly gosh, 33 years of ancient history interest. And back, that was in New Zealand. That was at the University of Auckland. And I really just fell in love with the discipline of ancient history. And I'd always been interested in ancient warfare. So I naturally skewed towards ancient warfare, and obviously a lot of ancient history was warfare based, whether it be Herodotus or Thucydides or Xenophon or Caesar, or most of the historians cover military campaigns in some kind. And I'd always liked military history. My father was in the army. I'd always collected toy soldiers, painted models, made dioramas. Less of a war gamer. That's come only in the last decade, really. But I just loved aspects of ancient history. I also loved things that people don't like, which is a very peculiar interest, but, liminal things on the periphery, things that people are like, oh, well, no one looks at that, and why should you look at that? And I fell in love with those sorts of things. There's some other podcasts I've done where I talk about Polyaenus of Macedon and Sextus Julius Frontinus being my favorite authors, and other aspects of things that most people sort of jump over quickly or don't want to explore. And I wanted to explore them. There's also several aspects of ancient warfare across all periods that are unanswered questions. And I really like diving into those unanswered questions. That was a combination of the word delve and dive, diving into them and trying to come up with an answer. And what I found in a lot of those is that the answer that people normally give is some 19th century German scholar came up with a theory, and it's never been expanded upon or explored more deeply since, and that opinion is simply repeated down through time. So coming across those and going, oh, hang on, let's have a look at that, and wanting to explore it has been something that's a fascination. And I suppose getting to the generalist idea, those sorts of things have always fascinated me, no matter where they occur in ancient history. And therefore, being an independent scholar, I, don't belong to any university, haven't got a job in academia. I just, track down the source material and do the research. And having my bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, whenever people used to joke about, well, would you like fries with that? Because the idea that a bachelor's degree or a master of arts was not useful. It teaches you how to learn. It teaches you how to read critically. It teaches you how to read sources. You can read any history of any subject and go, right, what's going on here? Go back to the primary sources, look at the secondary sources. And so that's a skill that I appreciate very much from my university career and have basically brought to bear on any area of study that I want to look at. And so in a way, that's because at the University of Auckland, you did a broad range of ancient history and your bachelor's degree. So I did, Egyptian and Near Eastern history, Greek history, Roman history, late Roman history. Although interestingly, the late Roman history was done through the history department rather than the ancient history department. But, I was very lucky to be lectured by some very learned scholars throughout my university career. And so that kind of gave me an interest in all sorts of aspects of ancient history, whether they be late Roman or high Roman or middle Republican or indeed Greek, even going all the way back to the warfare of Homer. And even earlier, I'm fascinated by the Battle of Megiddo, for instance, and the Battle of Kadesh and things like that. So bringing that sort of knowledge to bear. One of the other advantages is I'm an obsessive book collector. I don't know if you can tell. And so I have spent the last sort of 30-something years buying all the books. Just ask my wife. And, do we really need that? Yes, we do. So I've got the penchant for buying the books, saving up, delving into it, reading up the history. Bit of a dipper, though. I'll read up a bit of the history because I want to explore a particular aspect of things. And so in that regard, I will look at a sort of a general spread, but within that general spread, get very specific and very deep on a particular issue, and generally a particular issue that no one else seems to be very interested in at all. And my sort of greatest successes as a scholar have been to explore those sorts of issues which people have ignored or not considered worthy. Weirdly, my weakest bit is of ancient history in general is late Republican Rome, Julius Caesar and Cicero and things. I've done some work there, but people spend their entire careers looking at Caesar or their entire career looking at Cicero. I've done some work on Marius. I've done some work. I have, in fact, done some work on Cicero, but I then sort of pick up again in the mid-1st century AD. So there's a whole chunk of late Republic and early Empire that's not my strong suit. But there's lots of other scholars who that is their strong suit, so they can tag with that. So that's how I generally became a generalist. Yeah, I tend to go wherever there's a fascinating little insight, and some of those can take you by surprise. You're not necessarily looking for it. You'll be doing something completely unrelated and you'll read an anecdote, and I'll probably do some podcasts on a couple of those coming up, actually, and delving into that and going, oh, this is fascinating. And it's a deep rabbit hole. It's a deep, deep rabbit hole, decades long lasting rabbit hole, which is lovely. Sometimes there's no conclusion at the end. We don't know. But you've done a lot of digging to find out we don't know. But often what I found is what we think we know has been misplaced, and you can actually start to extrapolate out a better picture, even if that better picture seems to be somehow less informed. I think if you spend a long time examining a subject and come up with a we don't know and a speculation, that's still better than, of course, this. And then when you actually go and explore it, that's not what is the case at all. Yeah, I would always make an argument for people to be generalists, to be widely read, to be curious, a bit like Mark Twain. I didn't read the Mark Twain. I'm quoting Ted Lasso. Be curious. And I'm very curious about all sorts of things, and come across an anecdote and, a footnote, and off you go. So I would encourage that kind of approach from any budding historian, young, old, beginner, experienced, and certainly seen me through a lot of ancient history. And I think I've had a lot of successes by being curious and doing things in a deep generalist kind of way. So, Jamie, I hope that answers your question, and join me again for some more ancient warfare answers. Thanks.